Hey, it's Adam. Once again, thank you for tuning in to part 4 of this little mini-series of accessing really your lower abdominal region here, really becoming aware of this pelvic region, accessing your lower core, if you will. And this time we're going to look at a couple of externally rotated poses. What's known as a really Supta Padangusthasana II, right, which is the one with the leg turned out, Utthita Padangusthasana II, Warrior II, Half Moon, and Triangle. Right? So there are several here. And so we're going to run through them very, very quickly. If you are following along at home for this one, what I'm going to recommend doing is pausing in between sides or rewinding, backing up, and then repeating for the second side. And I'm just going to try to keep this short and sweet here. And so first things first, Supta Padangusthasana II. And if your extended leg here, right, it's a reclined hand to big toe pose. Your second leg or extended leg, sorry, is against a wall, right, so that you can find that sense of Tadasana, find that press through your extended, the foot of your extended leg. It's really beneficial. What we can do if you're just, let's say, laying in the park like I am right now, is to take, you know, we'll start off on the right side here. You know what, I'll do my left side because it's a little bit less accessible. So it's easy to see where I need to do the work, right? And I can really demonstrate it for y'all. So, you know, the left leg is going to come straight up here. And you'll notice, and I'm just starting off with my hips even here. So my right leg is in Tadasana. Right heel's extended, inner right thigh wraps towards the ground, tailbone lengthens towards my inner right heel. So from here, just moving along at a fairly fast clip, I'm going to turn my left leg out here. Try to keep my hips even to the best of my ability. And you know, most of y'all notice, right, if this right leg just kind of drops out, what happens? You can even probably see from here, my right foot is turned out, my right groin is puffed out. Basically, I've lost a sense of Tadasana on my right side. So what I'll do is I'll wrap my inner right thigh towards the ground here. Keep my left thigh bone pressing down in my left hip socket. And you'll see, to keep this sense of work here, my leg doesn't come quite as far out. Right? So what we do is we're beginning to explore this idea of compensatory action. So my extended heel is really pressing forward. My big toe ball mound of my extended foot is really pressing forward. And then the thigh bone of my lifted leg here, my left leg, is really pressing down in my socket. And you just notice, right, in your own case, if your low ribs have come way up, hug those front low ribs in here so you don't lose your upper abdominal work in the process. And some of you, if you have longer, what's known as necks of your femurs, or just more open hips, your leg might be able to come all the way down without losing this work, you know, on the right half of your body, or on the half of your body that has the extended leg. And there is a very, very subtle twist here, right? My right rib cage wants to lift, so I'm wrapping my belly button to the right just a little bit here to keep firming in, to keep this work here. I'm just going to take a couple more breaths here. Inner right thigh wraps towards the ground, tailbone lengthens towards my inner right ankle. And you might find here that you're actually accessing abdominal muscles in ways that you don't normally. So that's just it. It's noticing where there's a tendency to slack and let loose, noticing where the compensatory action is, and then operating from that point. And it might be deceptively difficult. When you're ready, release. You can bring your extended leg back up, and then just let it come all the way down. And like I say, if you're following along at home, you might want to back this up and just do the second side. And we're going to come right to the second pose here. I can do this with my leg in a strap, but for my purposes today, and I'm actually going to switch sides here. Right, Utthita Padangusthasana, upright, extended hand to big toe pose variation 2 here. So in this case, I'm just going to start with my right leg bent 90 degrees. And once again, hips are working towards even here. Inner thigh of my wrap leg wraps back, tailbone lengthens down. So I find this abdominal work, and I'll notice, right, if I go to swing my right leg out, I'm exaggerating a little bit here, but you'll notice my right hip is lifted way up, my low ribs are splaying out, and my left groin is puffed out, right? It's all just kind of turned out. I'm just squeezing into my low back, you know, and I've completely lost this idea of accessing my lower core, right? So what I'm gonna do is return to center here and just keep this, right? just notice, right, my right hip begins to lift up, press my right thigh bone down to my right hip socket, hug my outer left hip in, wrap my inner left thigh back, lengthen my tailbone down. So you can even probably tell, even with a shirt on, that what's happening is my low ribs are hugging in. What's happening is my abdominals, transverse abdominis, in this lower core region, there's a lot of containment here. There's a lot more containment here. My leg doesn't come out as far. That's okay. Right, like I say, this is deceptively difficult. And this is more of a practice of adding stability as we add expansiveness here. Right, having checks and balances, which are going to add to the longevity of the practice and also add to a level of our awareness in the practice too. When you do find that you're ready, what you can do is just come down, and once again you might back this up just a few seconds and do the second side. And coming to the next part here, for me it's helpful to have a block handy. Right, Warrior II here. You know, there's a lot of talk about heel to arch alignment. I'm just going to point one thing out first. Right, in this case, I'm going more heel to arch today. Think of your back leg in this pose as a standing leg in these other poses, or the extended leg in these other poses, right, where it's like straight out here. And you'll notice my toes turn the same way as my knee. And there's this idea of my inner thigh wrapping back and my tailbone kind of lengthening down here so that I can really draw my right thigh bone into my right hip socket. Right, begin to access those abdominal muscles, press forward to keep myself upright. And then with this bent knee, it's working towards 90 degrees here. It's like I'm wrapping, this is my left leg, I'm wrapping my outer left thigh kind of down here so that my left sitting bone wraps in and under. And I'm hugging in. And then once again, just like when I was lying on my back, there is this subtle twist which begins to show itself. So I'm kind of wrapping my belly button, really wrapping my heart to the right. And then from here, arms can extend. And you'll notice the more that you can drive that right thigh bone into your right hip socket, keep it neutral, the more that this just turns into an opening of the left hip with the bent leg, right, or the hip with the bent leg. And a little bit of a twist. Maybe arms extend. Traditionally, gaze goes over the middle finger of that extended arm frontward, right? But really thinking of that left thigh bone wrapping out, that left sitting bone wrapping back and under as your right thigh bone presses into your right hip socket. And like I say, when you're ready, you can come out of this and come to the second side. You can back this up and just review it for the second side. Here we are. We're going to do a little bit of a transition here, coming from Warrior II. You'll see I have a block kind of just behind the heel of my front leg here. You see me just kind of switching sides for the sake of trying to keep myself even. Quick Warrior II kind of recap, right? Thigh of my back leg really presses back in my hip socket. And there's this hug of my low ribs in. My right thigh, my front thigh wraps down so that my right sitting bone can wrap back and under as I keep my low ribs in. And ultimately you are pressing forward from this, some call it the back hip, but it's really what's known as the greater trochanter bone, right? And you'll know notice the lower that you sink, the more that you wrap that right thigh outward, the more effort it is to keep those low ribs hugged in. And so from this Warrior II position in my legs, I'm going to keep my torso long, straight, right? As if to keep Tadasana in my torso, but my pelvis is going to tilt, and my right thigh, it wants to splay out here. My right hip wants to splay out as I extend my legs, so I'm really going to work to wrap this right thigh outward, wrap my right sitting bone back and under. Left thigh bone continues to press into my left hip socket, and I'm still finding that gentle twist, right? My sternum is still turning, in this case facing towards the camera. Palm comes down to a block. Many of you can probably get your palm down to the ground. You know, traditionally left arm to the sky. If you want to take it a step further, you can let your right ear drop towards your right shoulder and then look over your left shoulder here. You can even add a little bit of the side plank action in your right arm, right? But really to keep accessing this lower abdominal region here, right thigh wraps outward, right sitting bone wraps back and under towards your left sitting bone, low ribs hug in, left thigh bone actively presses into your left hip socket. Trikonasana or Tita Trikonasana, extended triangle pose. And once again, consider rewinding that and going through on the second side if you're following along at home, just to make sure that the two sides are even. All right, one last little bit here. Once again, switching back to my left side here. This is what's known as, right, we're gonna go warrior two to triangle the half moon. And once again, it's the same sense of that thigh bone of that extended leg, in this case, my right leg, it's pressing into my right hip socket, keeping my low ribs hugged in, and this left thigh kind of wraps outward so that my right thigh is parallel to what would be the side of my mat or a wall, you know, coming in. And the more I sink in, right, the harder it is to kind of press that right thigh bone in to my hip socket, to hug my low ribs in. And then once again, going a step further here, right, coming towards this triangle pose, left thigh presses back here, and really my left thigh wraps outward so that my left hip can, or left sitting bone can wrap under. My right thigh bone continues to press into my back in my right hip socket to keep accessing this lower core. You even see I'm starting to shake a little bit in the process, really trying to emphasize this here. Right? Left palm comes down to a block here. Ground is slightly less than level, so I'm going to just take this up a notch for stability purposes. Really keeping that outer thigh, really that left thigh wrapping outward, pressing that right thigh bone into my right hip socket. Now once again, we find where here's triangle, right, minus my arm rising, but keeping the same wrap outward of my left thigh, the same press of my right thigh bone into my right hip socket, so I keep my lower abdominal muscles. Take a slight bend in my left knee here and shift it forward, shift it forward, shift it forward, right? And my left hip, it wants to splay out here, so I'm gonna hug it in, hug my right thigh bone into my right hip socket so everything is gathered down here in these lower abdominals. Ardha Chandrasana, half moon pose. So in many cases, people will talk about stacking their hips, but I'm a great example here. If I go to stack my hips, what happens? My low ribs hang out, I lose this gathering of my core, I lose the access to my lower abdominal muscles, and I'm just kind of, I'm balancing, and it's cute, right? But I've lost all this idea of containment, accessibility, and even ease. I've lost the stability that coexists or is helpful to coexist along my expansiveness to make this experience sustainable. So once again, right thigh bone presses back in my right hip socket, outer left hip presses in, heart forward, and hinging from here. And then once again, let's transition back to warrior two. You can bend into that left knee, that left hip wants to splay out, hug it in, hug your right thigh bone into your right hip socket, and very gently back, Virabhadrasana II, making any adjustments as necessary. Once again, if you're following along, reverse, go through the second side. Until next time, this is Adam, live from the old city, Chiang Mai, Thailand, keystone-yoga.com, forthcoming very soon. And you can contact me at the email address provided for more information. Thanks and have a wonderful day.